Welcome to the Age UK Isle of Wight podcast. Today we have a wonderful guest, Mr. Tim Cripps, also known as
Terry. And I suppose at some point I was called Squadron Leader because I was in the RAF, but it's always Mr. now.
Okay,
yeah.
So Squadron Leader Cripps.
Yes.
Let's begin. It's fantastic to be able to hear about your story. So start us off. Tell us how you began that amazing career.
Well, I guess I had a military upbringing, and so did my wife. Actually, both of our, my father and her father were both army brigadiers. So we grew up in a military environment. My father was an instructor at the Army Staff College at Camberley, Sandhurst, and and I suppose it seemed natural that I would go into the Air Force. My father actually was in the Army, but he also flew in the Royal Flying Corps and was jolly lucky to survive the war, a very dangerous war he had in the First World War. In the Second World War he was a brigadier, and he was General Officer Commanding of the Naples area in the immediate aftermath of the war when Italy was devastated, and we went out to live with him out there and had a fabulous time because he was a kind of VIP who had access to funds to rebuild all sorts of devastated places like the San Carlo Opera Company. Okay. So he was right in with the famous tenor Gigli, and ballet dancers, and so we had a high old time. He requisitioned King Umberto of Italy, who was deposed, but he requisitioned his personal motor yacht, and we used to use it on trips to Capri and Ischia. I mean, I was 9-year-old then. It was just a wonderful life. We learned, we did snorkeling and things. And then it seemed quite natural to go. Well, he put me through a good public school, and I got a good education.
Which one was that?
Sherborne.
Okay.
Sherborne. I wasn't frightfully keen on sport except for diving, which I represented the school at diving and at shooting. Okay. I had a good eye, and I shot for the RAF as well, actually, in the RAF rifle team. But I came to the age when in 1955, you had to do national service unless you had a good excuse. And so I was reasonably keen. I'd done cadet force at Sherborne, which put you through all the usual drill and polishing your boots till you could see your face. And so going into the Air Force was a simple trip. It wasn't any. Some of my compatriots who joined with me struggled with the fairly absurd discipline like polishing the end of your bed and folding your sheets so that they were exactly in square. I just find that a bit of a breeze, really. And that only lasted, the Air Force is pretty minimal on that, about 3 or 4 months. And then I was off as just 18 to Canada.
Okay.
First class on the Empress of Canada liner from Liverpool up the St. Lawrence River and to flying training straight away on these mighty beasts, these big Harvards, which were the precursor when someone in the Air Force in the war was going on Spitfires, they would fly Harvards because they were very similar and similarly quite a handful.
What kind of range would they have?
Either 1,000 miles or so you could fly, but the big powerful engine and a tail wheel, which made them challenging. All modern aeroplanes have nose wheels because they tend to go in a straight line when you land, but the exact opposite is true of a tail wheel. Okay. And the most common accident during flying training was a ground loop. You lost control on the ground, you couldn't keep straight, and the aircraft quickly wound up and you ended up sort of righting the undercarriage off. Okay. It was quite exciting, and it was reckoned to be a good trainer because it sorted out the, the sheep from the goats.
Wheat from the chaff, and from the boys.
Wheat from the chaff, okay. Yes indeed. It was pretty exciting, and very heady stuff for an 18-year-old, and when you were allowed off solo, sometimes you could go on a navigation exercise and you were flying low over the lakes and frightening geese, and I remember chasing a friend of mine. We sort of agreed to meet up, and he was so low that his propeller was spraying back water onto my windscreen, and I had to warn him that he was pushing his luck.
I've got a question for you. So when I was reading about your career, fear, does fear, are you programmed with that anywhere?
I am not fearless, but
pretty well.
Pretty well. I haven't got a fear of heights much. I mean, I've done a lot of extreme heights,
but just
climbing, tree surgery.
Yeah. Yes, please, Hazel. You have to live with it.
I can change some of it. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's no sense of fear. So really, I mean,
very little. I mean, I did the parachuting course, for instance, and one part of it, you jump from a balloon. Mm-hmm. And you literally step out of the door in one particular type of drop. You literally drop through a hole in the floor. Mm. So you're looking down on you can just imagine like a trap door, and you see exactly where you're going, and you just cold-bloodedly step through this hole. I just find it all great fun, actually. Yeah.
Okay. Because as we go through this list of achievements, and also looking at the amount of planes that you tested and that you developed, that's what kept coming up in my mind as I was reading your history, is whether there is any point where fear does actually kick in, and you think, here we go. You talk about a couple of near-death experiences. There's a moment where you said you met God and you thought, time for a lifestyle change. Was that a moment of fear?
No, it was so split second. You know, the flight on which I crashed lasted less than 3 minutes. So we was pretty much struggling to stay airborne from the moment we got off the ground.
Okay.
And, people who were observing it said, "Tim, we saw you struggling to gain height, but you never did any better than parallel the ground." So the ground was rising very slightly, but we literally never got above 50 feet, which is probably why I didn't die when the plane finally did stop flying. It didn't have far to fall. Okay. It was pretty violent, but it wasn't that.
And I'm aware that's further in the story.
Yes,
I'll probably jumped you through.
But yeah.
So let's come back. So you've trained in Canada.
Trained in Canada, first on these piston engines, great big beast, and then you went over to, that was over in Alberta, lovely. Mm-hmm. First introduction to mountains, skiing at Banff and that sort of thing.
It's the scale, isn't it? I mean, coming from the UK, when we've travelled to Canada, I was shocked by the scale of Canada.
Yes. We travelled right across from Ontario to Alberta on the Canadian Pacific train. Okay. Something like 5 days, super meal, sitting in the observation car. You know, an awful lot of nothing across the prairies, but still, it was a great experience. And flying training was just wonderful fun day after day, and we had spare time. A friend and I teamed up early on, and we made a turbojet engine.
As you do.
Yeah, as you do. And our instructor saw this was really good engineering, giving us something to think about. It wasn't a wild success because we didn't have the materials. I mean, it literally melted when it got so hot, and it was very exciting.
Did you attach it to anything?
Well, we put it in and we made a model a bit like the Sabre jet, sort of straight through type of engine. But this engine got so hot that actually it set fire to the fuselage, and all we could salvage, the wings were plug in, so to pull off. So we pulled the wings off, and we saved them. But no, we got up to all sorts.
Where does the making side of things happen in your life? Were you trained formally as an engineer, or did you acquire those skills?
I think it's something that's a bit inborn, isn't it? Really, I had Meccano from an early age.
You too.
Loved Meccano, and I remember rigging up from my bedroom window. There was an apple tree about 20 feet away, and I rigged up a little funicular, a sort of cable car across the apple tree, and I had lots of little clockwork. A steam, I had a little Hornby train set, and my father used to join me in that, and so mechanical things just came naturally, and which is good because later on the test flying course there is a fair deal of engineering. Yeah.
So is it mainly from problem solving,
yes.
being put into problem solving situations that you develop those skills?
I think so, exactly. You know, trying to design some. In fact, later on, I put it to very good use and shared the enthusiasm with students when I took up the new subject that was introduced called Craft Design and Technology.
Remember it well?
CDT. Yeah. Well, we made the most of that. I mean, of course, being aeronautical, the first thing I did was to build a wind tunnel.
Okay.
And,
As you do.
and we had a massive blower that had once powered an organ or something. Anyway, so we used that as the wind, and we tested aeroplane models and wings,
Okay.
and so the students got a very high degree of
Yeah.
aeronautical
And practical,
expertise
hands-on doing.
and making aeroplanes. Of
Yeah,
course,
lovely.
we had a barn, a big barn, so we used to go over there, and I rigged up a special launching catapult, bits like an aircraft carrier in a way, that used to take these models and give them a precise launch. So we would mark a chalk runway down the barn
Okay.
and score point. I mean, I could hardly get them to go away at the end of the lesson. You imagine, it was such fun.
Yeah.
That's when my daughter asked me, what was the object of the lesson? Dad, I said, I don't know.
We just made it.
They enjoyed
it was great. That's enough. That's enough for me. So,
Yeah.
so where's next? What happens next after?
Well, yes, we trained on T-33s. That's that nice Silver Star. It was a very nice American aeroplane. Americans have always been comfort conscious. The RAF expected their pilots to put up with really pretty crude cockpits. You'd better not drop your pencil, because you'll have to get an engineer to get, you'll probably have to cancel the flight.
Okay.
And he'll have to grovel around for hours down underneath the seats.
Because there's no floor.
No floor. Well, the Americans all had it nicely panelled in. It was all together, more organised. And maybe they're also rather more corpulent. Anyway, they have more roomy cockpits. You're not forced to sit in a cramped little space. You've got a much bigger, nice, clear, unobstructed canopy to see through. I do remember a moving experience there. I watched one of my very good friends. He was a really nice guy. I saw him take off one day in this jet, this American jet aircraft, and he took off and he just slowly, we just watched, that's strange, after takeoff, he slowly rolled upside down and then just went straight into the ground. Bang, big ball of fire. And nobody ever knew what had happened, but we buried him. And I just thought, as we stood there on this cold prairie, and his parents, 5,000 miles away, it just made me really sad and think it made me think about the point of life. There must be more to it. Where's he gone to? It was quite.
Was that the Silver
That
Star?
was the Silver Star.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And